Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today we are talking about how to lead when you are not the expert in the room, because we know how difficult that can be, and we know how many hours you can spend trying to become the expert or trying to understand what the experts are up to in your team. So we're going to unpack all of this today and we're going to get straight into it. So if someone is in this situation and they are the leader of a team of experts, like, how are they feeling?
Often vulnerable is one of the things that it feels, because there's quite a distinct career stage where this tends to happen. And it's often when you get quite a chunky promotion, or you might move organization and start in a new industry or more senior role, where you're suddenly not the expert in everything that your team of people do or are responsible for. And so I think it feels vulnerable because you start to question, do I know enough? Can I make the right decisions? How the hell do I set people's targets? You go round in circles with all of these questions. And I think when you've been used to being known for your expertise, and then suddenly you're leading people who are far more expert than you, it's natural to question yourself. It's natural to feel, oh, am I good enough? Am I up to this? How do I handle this situation? So yeah, lots of doubts and fears, I think, come up at this stage.
Yeah, and I think there's a real tipping point, isn't there, where you kind of step into that true leadership role, where you move away from trying to be the expert or the technical person, and you step into that real leadership role and you take it on and you run with it. And, a lot of the time you're learning on the job, aren't you? You working with a range of people, you're learning on the job, you are addressing all of the thoughts and the feelings that come up along the way. And I think sometimes it's easy to let imposter syndrome set in, isn't it, at this point, or to feel a little bit inferior to these people on your team. But essentially, they're doing their job and you're doing your job, and your job is to keep them motivated, keep them inspired, and make sure that they're delivering what they need to deliver. So how do you then shift from that expert mindset into that true leadership mindset? Because I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Because if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm getting so caught up in the day-to-day, then you're probably still working from that expert perspective. And this is where you can start thinking about, how do I step up and be that leader, the true leader?
Yeah, and I think, funnily enough, it's actually relatively easy. No, maybe not easy. It's relatively simple. It's probably a better word, because it is really about that mindset shift that you're describing. But when you're in your own head, it is quite difficult to make that shift. So if you're thinking about, how do I make good decisions because I don't know enough? If you're thinking about, am I going to be shown up because members of my team are the ones who are answering? Or if you're maybe at a senior team meeting and you're worried that somebody's going to ask you a question and you're going to have to say, oh, I don't know, I'm going to have to check with my team, it feels really uncomfortable. And so I think the big piece is to recognize that you've got to let go of the expert in order to embrace being a leader. So the analogy that I often share with people is, when you are conducting an orchestra, you are not the soloist. You're not running from here to there and playing all the different instruments. And it would be absolute chaos, because even if you could play the instruments, if you're over there doing that, well, how does everybody else know when they need to come in and what their part is? How do you make sure the timing's right? So as a leader, you've really got to think of yourself in that conductor role. And if you've been used to playing in the orchestra, then it is going to feel weird being the conductor. But that's what you've got to recognize, is that that's what you're aspiring to. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And that's the bit that you've got to embrace.
Yeah, and I love that analogy about you're the conductor and not the soloist, because I think it is quite difficult, isn't it, when you've come from that place of being an expert or a technical person, and now your job's to lead the team, and there's different levels of expertise within the team. And I think it can be really hard. And I think you can ask yourself, actually, you can reflect on it and say, am I acting as the conductor, or am I still involved in trying to play all the instruments? So I think that's a really, really good analogy. I love that one. And I think also as well, it's being honest about what you do and you don't know. And I think that's where you can start to build the trust with your team, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it's really important, because if you make out that you know answers to things, or you think that you're more expert than you really are, that's when you really are going to be exposed quite quickly. And a typical example that I've seen time and time again with this is when people are trying to set targets for other people, and they have no basis for knowing what is, from a marketing perspective, for example. If you're a head of marketing and someone who's not an expert decides this is your lead gen target and has no basis of understanding, how does that fit? How does that compare? What's the marketing budget that's going to be required in order to generate that number of leads? Somebody just coming in and setting a number exposes themselves for the fact that they don't have the understanding behind it. And that's the risk, is if you try and keep covering it up and you try and bluff your way through it, then you're going to get exposed far quicker than if you're honest about what you do and don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing, isn't it, when you're a leader, because you don't want people to think that you don't know the answers. But sometimes actually that makes you a better and stronger leader, to own up, to ask the questions, to find out the information. And I suppose in a way you're learning as you grow with the role. But I do find that when you act in that way, you do build more trust with the team, and you are seen as a stronger leader. I mean, I'll never forget one of my managers in the past who used to just agree to any work that was going because he thought it'd raise the profile of our team without asking us, could we actually deliver it? He'd just get the top line spec and then bring the work into the team, and we'd be left thinking, how on earth are we going to deliver this? And already we're overworked and under-resourced and all the rest of it. And it was hard to trust him because he kept doing that. And we tried to have conversations with him, but it was, he had all the answers and all of that kind of thing. And you can really see, like, hindsight's an amazing thing, but you can really kind of see how ineffective he was in that position, and how it doesn't actually take much to become more effective as a leader, just by listening to the team, understanding what's going on for them, and even running a few things past them. Like, you don't have to, as you say, have all the answers, but you're seen as a stronger leader for asking the right questions, aren't you?
It's a great point. And when people pause and think, how do I want to be led? Who's been the best leader that I have worked for? Those people don't tend to come up and be front of mind because they were the most technically expert. They often do have a solid base of knowledge, but it's those other types of qualities that you're describing, of they were collaborative, they made me feel good about my contribution, they were the people who would not set crazy, unrealistic expectations of me, but would encourage me to stretch and would help to develop me. Those are the things that we like to be on the receiving end of when we're being led. So when you apply that and think about how are you going to operate as a leader, it really points to very little of it is about the expertise. It's not saying that you don't need to know anything. Of course you do. And particularly if you're in those more scientific, academic fields, then yes, there is going to be a solid grounding that you're going to need, but you don't need as much technical understanding, particularly when you have got experts, because you've got them to lean on for that.
Yeah, and that is the key point, isn't it? Like that's why they're in your team. That's why maybe you've employed them. And even if you've inherited those experts, like they are your experts. They're the people that are going to help you shine. They're the people that are going to help you achieve the objectives overall. So what else can people do if they're in this situation? What else can they do to kind of step into that conductor role?
So there's a few practical strategies and elements that I think we can talk through. And the first we've touched on already, and that is that honesty about what you don't know. So having the self-awareness to know what do I know and what don't I know, and being willing to be honest about what you don't know will gain you far more respect far more quickly than trying to cover your tracks and seem like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like when you try to seem like you know what you're talking about, it just goes so wrong, doesn't it? And it's so much easier, but I totally get it that it can feel a bit rubbish as well if you feel like you haven't got all the answers and you feel like you need to have them. So in terms of making this shift then and moving forward and moving into that real leadership space, what else can people do?
The next thing I would say is to be willing to ask what I would term the naive questions. So there's one thing being honest about what you do and don't know, but sometimes it's not that you definitely know things or definitely don't. Sometimes it's about being willing to ask questions where you might worry that other people might think that that's a naive question that you should know the answer to. And the reason that that can be really valuable is because people who are technical experts are often so ingrained in their own ways of thinking that they're at level 87 while you're at level 10. And when you're willing to ask naive questions, what that can sometimes do is challenge some of the fundamental assumptions that they've been making. It might open different perspectives. And if it doesn't, then what it does do is it helps your learning. Because if you ask a question that seems or might be perceived as naive, then it might challenge assumptions and preconceptions, and it might help to find a different perspective. But if it doesn't, what it will do is help build your learning and your knowledge and your insight. So it really is a win-win because you get to gain more of that understanding so that you don't feel that you're so out of your depth the next time because you've got some of that rationale and that understanding.
Yeah, and that makes absolute sense. So is there anything else then that people can do?
So the next one I would say is to really lean into your coaching skills. So this is building on being willing to ask the naive questions, but it's also thinking about how can you ask questions that help people to build their own thinking. So this is less about asking questions that might give you an insight and more questions that might give them a different insight. So questions like, what options have you considered? Or how confident are you in this approach? Or what other perspectives could we consider are designed more so to help people either to deepen their thinking or to refine their thinking, or sometimes to help them articulate it. And that can be particularly helpful in things like that senior team meeting environment where you are going to be there and you're going to be talking about the work that your team does. Those types of questions will help to build a shared understanding between you and your team members that will enable you to represent people, enable you to share the rationale for why things are being done and answer some of those questions that other people may then ask at that more senior level.
Yeah, and I suppose that is absolutely right, isn't it? It's like if you start thinking about that, then you can ask the right questions, you can make better decisions and all that kind of stuff. So is there any final things that people can do?
So the real crux of it, I guess, is the more expert somebody is, the more you need to focus on the outcome that you're asking rather than the technical detail. And I think people who are not experts can, again, really get stuck if they try and have control over technical processes or get too involved or stuck into technical detail. When you have somebody who is more expert, then your style can be much more about that coaching style, but also true delegation. It's about being able to allow that person to have the accountability, the responsibility, and you can be thinking about, how can I get rid of obstacles that might get in their way? How can I support them so that they're not being asked for 17 other things while they're in the middle of trying to deliver this one thing? How can I make sure that there's effective collaboration and proper project teams set up so that this thing can be delivered? So you let them take care of the technical detail, they will love you for it, and you focus on those other things that are really allowing and facilitating them to be able to deliver with as few distractions as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is the thing, isn't it? Remove all of those distractions, remove all of the obstacles, and then you can see the real clear path. So yeah, I completely agree with that again. And I think there's very little that we disagree on, and it'll be funny when we do eventually disagree on something. And hopefully you'll get to hear it on the podcast. And I know when I think back to when I was brand new in a leadership role and I was leading a team of experts, there was like a whole range of different people, and I just wasted so much time trying to learn their jobs because that was kind of what I was told to do at the time. You need to understand what they're doing in order to manage them. And actually, what I needed to do was let them get on with being the expert. And I needed to just make sure that they felt supported, challenged, that they were motivated and inspired to do the work that they needed to do, and they could provide the updates, and I could maybe learn a little bit along the way, but I didn't need to know it in depth. And I think that is probably, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it? But it's probably one of my biggest regrets in the early stages of being a leader, thinking that I needed to be the expert in everything. And it was really stressful. And you almost end up feeling burnt out. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I feel totally burnt out, then you probably need to reflect on what you're doing in your role and if you're trying to be the expert and the leader. And I know as I progressed through my career as a leader, I started to move more away from needing to be the expert. But it was so hard. Like, it was really hard. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, it was a real easy transition. Once I realized what I was doing wrong, I then stepped into being this amazing leader. It was a journey. I'm still on that journey now. I'm still learning, and I'm always open to being the best leader that I can be. And, you'll still make mistakes. You'll still get involved in stuff that you probably shouldn't get involved in. But I think it's just being able to take that strategic view, isn't it? To be able to take that step back. And like you say, like, I absolutely love that analogy. I'm now going to use it in everything. Like, am I being the conductor of my department, of my team, of my company? Like, am I the conductor, or am I trying to play the instruments? And I mean, I am absolutely rubbish at playing any instrument, so I definitely am going to use that every time I think I'm getting a little bit too far in, or I'm thinking about things from a technical or an expert level. I'm going to think, do I need to be thinking about this, or do I need to zoom out and be more strategic? So yeah, I think for me, this is an episode I would have absolutely loved back when I was like, 25, 26 in brand new leadership role, trying to do everything, learn everything, be the one that had all the knowledge and all the answers, I think this would have been my perfect episode.
I would say to people as well, it's important to be kind to yourself and understand that this is natural. We go through the whole education system where knowledge is prized and you get your top marks by being the most expert at that particular subject. And then you kind of refine your subject and, you might go on to higher education or what have you. But we just constantly get these messages reinforced that being an expert is what it's all about, and getting things right and knowing the answers and having certainty. And so I think all of that contributes to why this shift is so challenging. The other thing I just want to pick up on before we finish was listening as you were describing there, is that aspect of it's also challenging because sometimes there will be aspects of your role where you are the expert in certain things. So for most people in their first leadership role, they're not spending 100% of their time leading people. They have their own responsibilities, their own technical things that they need to deliver as well. And so I think trying to almost have that mindset where you've got both of those things happening at the same time within your role is a real challenge. So yeah, I just want to say to people to just be kind to yourself, understand why it happens and where it comes from, but also hopefully those tips that we've shared will make that a little bit easier and help you really think about how you can get the best out of experts, let them do their thing without you having to be too involved, and give you some of that capacity back to focus on being at your best, both within the technical aspects of your role and on the leadership side.
Yeah, and we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So jump into our DMs and tell us your stories, or even just tell us where you're up to and what you're going to work on. And hopefully you found this episode useful. And please don't forget to share it with anybody else that you think it might help. And if you are struggling with the transition, if you do need support, then do get in touch. Jackie does some great power hours. We've got some great resources in Career Club. And if you're thinking that your team or your leaders in the corporate space could use some support, then there's lots of different training sessions and workshops that we also run. So get in touch with us. Let us know what's going on for you. Let us know how we can support you. And we will be back next week with another episode.
Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.